This episode is brought to you by my Fertility Friday group programs. Make sure to head over to fertilityfriday.com/group program to find out more information about my January 2017 groups and also how to apply. Again, that's fertilityfriday.com/group program. This is the Fertility Friday podcast, episode number 107. Welcome to the 107th episode of the Fertility Friday podcast. Thank you for joining me today. I'm Lisa from fertilityfriday.com, and this is your source for information about the fertility awareness method and all things fertility. Before I jump into today's interview, I just wanted to take a moment and let you know about my new group programs that are coming out in January. So I recently completed my 10-week group program that I had going on since August. We started in mid-August, and it was just an amazing experience. So I was working with a small group of women. We met every single week, and not only did we delve into fertility awareness charting and really get a handle on what all the mucus stuff means and how to sort it all out, we also really started to get a handle on what's happening, what are the underlying factors that are contributing to cycle irregularities. And so it was just my complete privilege and honor to work with such an amazing group of women and to see how they were supporting each other and there for each other. So let me tell you, there's just something really powerful about working in a group. And I know that firsthand because that's how I learned to chart as well. And so that's why I'm so passionate about creating that experience and opportunity for you. And I'd also like to share with you what one of my clients recently said about her experience.
Absolutely do it. You can't lose anything except for being empowered by your own body and empowered by knowledge that you'll have that you are shocked that you didn't know. I mean, I've learned so much from Lisa's podcast just from listening to it obsessively, but there was even more things I learned that I had no idea. Like, I mean, I swear after every session, I'm going to my husband and be like, oh my gosh, did you know? Did you know this? And I'm telling my girlfriends and they're like, what are you talking about? Like there's so much, like, I don't know. It's really empowering as a woman to know about your body. And I feel like you can only get more of that by taking a class.
So make sure to head over to fertilityfriday.com/group program for more information. All right. So before we jump into this second edition of my fertility awareness reality series, I just want to let you all know that I am not a medical doctor. I am not a naturopath, and I do not play one on the internet. I do not play one on the podcast. I am a fertility awareness educator. I am a Justice Holistic Health Reproductive Practitioner intern. And what I do with clients is I connect them with the knowledge and information based on what I see on their menstrual cycle charts. I use the charts as somewhat of a diagnostic tool. Of course, I can't look at a chart and make a diagnosis. I don't diagnose things because I'm not a physician. But what I can do is I can see certain trends and patterns, and I draw from my years of experience and my training to be able to really just connect the dots and use that information to really get at what's happening. So I want to be very clear that these reality series sessions are for informational purposes only. They are not meant to diagnose or treat or anything like that. They're for your information. And I'm just so honored that these women who I've worked with were so open and willing to share such personal conversations in such a public sphere. And the reason that they are so open and willing to do that is because of their own desires to share and to help other women to learn. So I'm just really honored to be able to do something like this for all of you listening because, well, it's a lot of fun, but it's also really informative. And I know a lot of you have actually asked for me to interview real women and to have real women talk about their stories because that is just as powerful, if not more powerful, oftentimes than speaking to an expert. So I love being able to do something like this. But with that said, I want to kind of just for all of you to remember that if I'm working with somebody one-on-one, that is within the context of there's a lot of things going on. When I work with clients one-on-one, I have access to their charts. I have access to their health history. And especially with the women who I've had on the show, I mean, we have that professional relationship that's been ongoing. And so, anything that I'm suggesting is within the context of that. All of my clients are under the care of their own medical doctors. Some are under the care of fertility specialists. Some are under the care of naturopathic doctors or traditional Chinese medicine practitioners. And so all of my clients have essentially a strong healthcare team, and all of the information that they're receiving is within the context of those professional relationships as well. And I always encourage my clients to consult with their team of health practitioners before implementing any changes. Also, every woman is different. Things show up differently for different women in different ways on their charts. No two women's charts are the same. And I have not had two women who have the same exact situation or presentation. And so I just want you to keep that in mind when you're listening. And also keep in mind that if you are struggling with any particular fertility challenge, or there's something perhaps in your menstrual cycle chart that's not adding up, you might want to consider working with a practitioner and seeking the detailed support that you need to really help you find those answers. And so without further ado, let's hop into the interview. So today I'm very excited to welcome my guest, Carolina. Carolina is one of the members of my Fertility Boost group program. And so we've had the pleasure of being in a group together for it's 2.5 months now, because we're coming to the end of the group. And so I'm really excited to dive in with her today. We have lots of things to talk about. So thank you so much, Carolina, for being on the show.
Thanks. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, it's a little weird for me as well to share kind of this work publicly, but it's such a great opportunity to kind of educate the listeners around different cycle things that don't come up on the show. And also a really great opportunity just to kind of, for you and I so this is our first one-on-one, even though we've been together in the group for 10 weeks. So I'm really excited to have you. And I wanted to start, I guess, by maybe you could share a little bit about what made you reach out and join the group in the first place. And maybe we can start there.
Sure. So I actually discovered you from searching podcasts for recurrent miscarriage and MTHFR. And you were the podcast that spoke to me, and I instantly became addicted. And I binged listened to as many episodes as I could. And I realized there were so many things about my body I had no idea about. So I was just hungry for information because I'd had my 4th miscarriage within 14 months. So it's been a really hard year just trying to figure out what's going on with my body. So I heard about your class. So I reached out and I joined it, and it's been a great experience. And I'm now realizing that there's still a lot of things I don't know about my body and my cycle, and how that can contribute to just, a healthy gestation and, carrying a pregnancy to term. So yeah, that's why I'm here today, and why I'm going to start working with you more one-on-one.
Yeah. When clients come to me, they often kind of think, okay, so I'll get this FAM thing down in a session or two. It's like, what possibly would I need more than that? So maybe share how it's possible to even talk about these topics for 10 weeks, because we've had a weekly session for 10 weeks.
Yeah. So that is exactly what I thought. Okay, great. I'll do this, 10-week session, or, 2.5 months work with, a group of girls, and I'll figure it out, and no problem. But there's so much more to mucus and diet and temperatures. And, I feel like I'm getting the grasp of things, but I mean, still, like, just differentiating, like, why is this mucus that color, and why is it coming on this day, and why don't I have it this many days in a row? And, just kind of seeing that my temperatures are lower than normal, but my thyroid tests normal. So, things like that, where I still have all these mysteries even after, but, I feel like there's a lot I'm learning. It's like a whole new language, I guess.
Yeah, that's such a good way to describe it, because it's what sets apart this methodology of using fertility awareness as a diagnostic tool is that, for instance, like, doctors don't necessarily have that as a feedback tool to look back on the progress. So for my work with clients, we try to identify what the underlying causes are. And we talked in our last session about the camel's back scenario. And so just really quickly, just to put that idea out there, it's basically each individual woman has her own challenges and her own health challenges, especially if she's seeing abnormalities in her menstrual cycle. And so what our job is to figure out, okay, Carolina, what's on your camel's back? And then through our work together, we try to unpack it as much as possible to see what happens when we take those stressors off your body and allow your body to heal naturally. And so, as you can imagine, then this is a complex process where we have to go through and identify. So it's, and one of the benefits then of having the chart is that it tells us. So if we think, okay, it must be the gut issue, and then we really go hard on that, the chart will give us the feedback to say, okay, is it that? Do we need to tweak that a little bit more? Okay, we need to re-strategize. And so that's the kind of unique aspect of charting that makes a difference in that. And so I appreciate you sharing your perspective there, because I think it's really helpful. And one of the things I try to talk about too is that there's this idea in our culture that, okay, I'm having a problem, I'll just go get one session of acupuncture and then I'll get pregnant. And it's so not like that because it's that, again, that camel's back. There's stuff going on that we have to unpack. And then through the process of doing that, that's how we get our body back to working the way it's supposed to. So to give the audience a little bit of background, maybe you could share a little bit about your history in terms of your contraceptive use, what that looked like, how long, if you took, which I know you took it for a while, what types you took and kind of how long that, yeah.
Well, I was on birth control for about 13 years. Of course, my doctor put me on it because my cycles were irregular and I had really heavy cramping. So he put me on it right away. I think I was maybe, 16 or 17 maybe. And then I was on it for about 13, 14 years. I was on low estrogen FV 1/20, I think. And then orthotricycline and the NuvaRing. I know definitely towards the end, I was really starting to notice just problems like excessive sweating, or like I started getting really sensitive to the sun and got extreme sunburns actually. And they were actually worried that I had lupus, and I tested negative for lupus, and I don't know, I just started feeling bad on the birth control. So I stopped it, and suddenly I have no problem to the sun anymore. It's a very interesting side effect, but yeah, I didn't feel good. So I stopped.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's really interesting. I'd have to now my curiosity is piqued as to the connection, if there is one, to the birth control pill and your sensitivity to the sun.
That's the only thing I could figure out. Like blister sunburns, like, wow. and not even that insane amount of sun exposure, because I was always being in the sun. And then just suddenly it was like 2 different occasions I got 2nd degree sunburns, and it didn't seem an abnormal amount of time in the sun. But that's the only thing I can contribute to it. So.
Well, and we've talked about this in the group a little bit, and I went through your intake form and I was looking for the kind of exact time period, but I couldn't find it. But maybe you could share with the listeners your history just as a vegetarian, maybe just delve into that a little bit, like when you became a vegetarian, what the reasons were, and then how long that's been going on.
Yes. So I've been a vegetarian since 1998. I started working at this really cool vegetarian hippie store restaurant, and I was just like, oh, this is awesome. And I just started eating it, and, I was like, this is easy. I don't have to decide what to eat. It's just, I don't know, it just felt really, really easy to me, and I just liked it. It just felt like it connected with me. And so for 18 years, I was a vegetarian. I did eat on occasion some fish, but I was never a fishy. I was never turned on by it. I heard some of your podcasts. There was several of them actually about how important, animal fats are for pregnancy, and how much your body really needs those nutrients to, form another human life. And I realized I hardly got enough protein. I ate tons of bread all the time and cheese. And there was episodes about if you have an MTHFR mutation, how folic acid and, that's found in wheat can be bad. So I was like, oh my gosh, I feel like I had to reassess everything I've been eating. So I So just about a month ago, month and a half, I started eating meat. So,
which is huge. I
it's
think
huge.
I took a moment in the group and I was like, can we just take a second to acknowledge, like, because I mean, I talk about the connection, and part of it is because in my training through Justice, I mean, the training draws from, scientific research. The reading list is completely obscene. Honestly, it's crazy. But we also draw from 30 plus years of experience, kind of combined experience of the different women who have been in the field working with women and using their chart as a diagnostic tool. So it's a combination of information that we draw from. And so if you were to speak to Geraldine Mattis, who has worked in the field for, say, 30 plus years, she would say that, well, I shouldn't say that. Let me paraphrase because I don't want to like quote her or whatever and have her be like, I would say that. But from my understanding in her work with clients, if she worked with somebody who didn't eat any animal protein or animal fat and they had a healthy cycle, then she'd be fine. But then because we're using the cycle as a diagnostic tool, if the cycle, it's kind of like the cycle doesn't lie, right? So then if the cycle is off, then we have to put it on the table and look at it and actually see if that could be a contributing factor. And so as you described, so I went through your intake and, you've been through a lot. There's a lot of stuff going on. And one of the things that I wanted to ask you about, because I noticed on the intake form that you've kind of struggled with IBS. So did you want to talk to me a little bit about, because then when you mentioned as well that you ate like a ton of bread, right? And cheese, I'm thinking, oh my God, because IBS and gluten sensitivity and celiac are kind of like a family that doesn't get along at all. So actually, before we get into that, could you share a little bit about what your typical diet was like? I know it would have shifted over 18 years, but just give me like the rundown of typically what your diet was like as a vegetarian.
Oh my gosh, it's kind of embarrassing. But my favorite food was bagels and cream cheese. And if I could have had that all day long, I would. So that was normally breakfast. And then, I might have like a grilled cheese at lunch. And then maybe pizza at dinner. And, I'd had some broccoli or, some vegetables. And I felt like I was, being good. Or sometimes I'd have pasta with some vegetables. Or, I had a lot of Morningstar and, all those fake meat, imitation meat stuff. Tons of those all the time. Like, and, that's full of gluten also. And it's wheat gluten. And
typically soy also.
Yeah.
Was soy a big part of?
Yeah. Well, and then, after my fourth miscarriage, I was like, okay, well, maybe the fermented soy products are not good. So I veered away from that, but then I was eating a ton of tofu and,
which is not fermented, and arguably the fermentation process kills some of the phytates.
Yes.
Or that, yeah.
So I tried to shift away from that, but then, I was still eating bread and, trying to get away from bread. But yeah, I mean, to go back to your thing, IBS, it's like when it's just like your menstrual cycle. If you only see yours your whole life, that's all you know is normal. And so it's just like, going to the bathroom, if you only know how you normally do it, that's what you think is normal until you start talking to other people and you're like, maybe I'm not that normal.
Well, and so, there was a few different, kind of typical GI issues that you would expect it did have IBS. So was that something that was diagnosed?
No, it's just moreover, it was just always not easy for me. It's just never been easy. So it's kind of more of a not official diagnosis, but it's always been a struggle I've had,
Okay. Well, because in there, so as we'll talk a bit more about gluten, and I think that should be a theme in one of our group sessions coming up in our alumni program. But there's a lot to be said about gluten and its impact on the gut. One of the things that we talked about in our group is leaky gut. We talked a little bit about gut health. We touched on it in our last session. And gluten in particular, and I mentioned the book Wheat Belly. So there's a gentleman named William Davis, I think is his name, and he wrote a book, Wheat Belly. And I mentioned in the group that it's kind of like the most severe, like anti-wheat book you'll ever read. Like after you read that book, it'll probably take you at least a week to recover and then be normal again. And you'll be looking at bread and wanting to throw it across the room, and you might even yell at it. You might be like, why are you doing this? Because he paints this really, really stark picture. So a lot of people would say, well, it can't be that bad. But he talks about the process of what we've done to the wheat. So back in the day, wheat grew in the fields, and it wasn't specifically engineered for the purpose of being a good and easy crop to pick. And over the years, because obviously bread is everywhere and wheat is in everything, the crops were engineered to be easier to manage for the farmers and to yield way more product. The bread that we eat today is not the same as the way it was before. And also when they select for genetic things, they're going to select in a way to make it easier for us. So the whole reason that bread is useful for baking is the gluten, because that's what holds it together. And so when they genetically mess it up, they kind of select for that aspect of the bread to make it more sticky. So then you end up with these hypergluten molecules that your body has a really hard time breaking down. And then looking kind of from a Weston A. Price perspective, from how traditional cultures used to do things, and perhaps why people didn't have celiac like 200, 300, 400 years ago, is because people used to then have this natural fermentation process of the bread. So, traditional sourdough bread, you would have a starter that it's alive. I've been fermenting things. I've been making kefir and things. So now when you start doing that, you see that it's alive. Anyways, that process then breaks down some of those harmful kind of gluten molecules. So traditional bread would have been made with wheat that was a totally different thing, where the gluten wasn't so sticky. And also they were fermenting the bread in a longer fermentation process. The bread might ferment all day type of thing before they would bake it. So it would break down those molecules. So then when you would eat it, it wouldn't, like your body already, it was kind of like half digested already. So then your body wouldn't have to deal with this raw product. And if you look at the traditional ways of preparing food and things like that, in a lot of different ways, whether it's how people prepare, say their beans. I don't know if you've ever soaked and sprouted beans, but if you don't, I don't know if you've ever eaten underdone beans. Have you ever eaten underdone beans?
Yes, not
oh
enjoyable.
my gosh, it's like the most painful thing. Because I tried to be vegetarian for a while and I tried to be vegan for a while. And so I was eating all these beans, and there were a couple times when I didn't boil them long enough. And honestly, I was like doubled over in pain. And so that means that, but if you then soak them overnight or whatever, and then allow them to sprout, they actually start to sprout. It's the weirdest thing. They grow, so it reminds you that they're alive. And then when you boil them, then they cook so much faster. And so that process of soaking and sprouting that traditional cultures knew about and they used to do breaks down those phytates. Where I'm going with this is that wheat is hard on the gut. Like that's basically the like bottom line where I'm getting to. And when it's not prepared properly, and when we're eating this kind of hybrid, crazy modern wheat stuff, and then that's part of the problem. The other part of the problem is that when you have like a big monocrop, like acres and acres and acres of one crop, then it makes it susceptible to bugs. So then they have to spray it. And so there's a whole thing that he talks about in his book where they discovered that at the end, so when the wheat is growing and kind of at the end of the cycle before they harvest, if they kill it with Roundup, so if they spray the fields, and this is a thing, so if they spray the fields and kill it with Roundup, the plant kind of it's almost like it's like dying, and it's like throwing up its last attempt. So it actually bears more wheat, and so it increases the yield. You read the book and it takes you like a week to recover, and you think the world is over and you want to cry. But the reason that I'm sharing this with you is just so that we can get a sense of, I don't know if it's the chicken or the egg, right?
Yeah.
I noticed that there's a family history of, like, you check the box, family history of IBS, Crohn's. Yeah. So it's in there somewhere. And so that would make you then more, susceptible. So I don't know whether it's that you have it and the wheat irritates it, or that you don't have it, but the wheat makes you have the symptom. You know what I'm trying to say? Like,
Yes.
is it the chicken or the egg? But either way, when you do have symptoms like that, one of the things that we'll want to consider is possibly actually getting that tested and diagnosed, figuring out if that is a thing. And also, I noticed that in your diet diary, you had noted like gluten-free this or gluten-free that. So I wanted to check in with you about that, because one of the things that I would kind of ask you about is your relationship with gluten and wheat and bread. Where are we at with that? And do you think that it could be a contributing factor here?
I'm definitely on an 80-20 now for the gluten and bread and whatnot, where I'm, at least 5 to 6 of the 7 days of the week, I'm trying not to eat any bread. And it's crazy. I actually have lost some weight. I don't know if it's because of that and eating the meat, but once I started stopping the bread and eating meat, it's crazy. Like pounds are kind of just dropping, not in a sickly way, but just in the excess way. So, I mean, I'm feeling better. I definitely feel lighter and less sluggish and going to the bathroom a lot more regularly, which is good.
Well, I noted you had said that. You were like, I added meat and I'm going to the bathroom more, which is, I remember there was a time when I actually thought that meat, red meat in particular, caused me to be constipated. I actually, I really did. And so I spent like a good period of my life trying to reduce my red meat consumption. All the time I was eating tons and tons of bread. Like in my family, like honestly, like there was a time when I couldn't actually picture what a day would look like if I didn't eat bread.
Me too. No, absolutely.
Like
me too.
I was confused. I was like, so then what do you have with breakfast? Like, what do you have with lunch? How do you eat your dinner? Like, what do you eat for snack? Like, I'm just like, what do you, I've been there. Like I'm there with you.
And I can feel the difference too when the day that I do have a sandwich or something and it's my cheat day or whatnot, I can feel it the next day.
And what is it?
Definitely.
What does it feel like? What do you feel?
I feel bloated, actually. Okay. I feel bloated and just more tired. Like my body, like my digestion just feels a little off. Like it's not as regular as it's been starting to feel.
Mm-hmm. Well, and one thing as well that I've experienced and that just your experience too. So we're always told that we need to get fiber. And so bread is hailed as the champion of fiber, but there's a lot of fiber in vegetables. And when you eat fat, it kind of lubricates the whole process. So, so all I can say is I eat a lot of fat and meat and I am basically never constipated. And that used to be a problem for me, not like clinical, like it's not like I had to go to the hospital or take laxatives, but it was a thing that regularly I would have, I actually would use like magnesium, in one way, shape, or form to loosen the bowels. But it was a regular thing. Like I had to have it in my house and fairly regularly when I went to the bath. And this was years ago, but I'm just sharing this with you because of what you had said, that adding meat and kind of getting rid of some of the bread had caused you to be more regular. And so there's definitely connection. And it doesn't, we're told the opposite, that the bread is supposed to help us poo. That could also be a sign of a sensitivity. So I guess kind of to close off the IBS section of our conversation, I'm going to say something that's super hard, but I suppose that's why we're working together, which would be, I think that it would be a good idea for us to talk a little bit more about the possibility of testing if it's something that you really want an answer, right?
Yeah.
The tests are not super fun, like the things you have to do to get that part of the, it's not like drinking barium and all that kind of stuff to so it's not mandatory, but if it's something that you're wanting an answer for, it would be a good idea to consider that. The other thing could be just to challenge yourself to actually go a full month. So November's coming up, so make November your month of no gluten. And the benefit of that is that gluten in general for a normal person isn't the best thing. It's just not. If you have IBS, what I would suggest for you would to be make November your month if you can. It's hard. We'll support you. And then add it in December and see how you feel. And take a real note of how you feel that month. Actually use your chart, use the note section. Just be really mindful of your energy levels, your digestion, your bowel movements, your mucus patterns. Just be super mindful of it. And then add it back in and then see the difference. And, you don't need a big, fancy, expensive test sometimes because of food sensitivity, like doing the elimination and then adding back can be like really helpful just to get that straight. Yeah. So I'm putting it out there. And apparently I'm doing it on air. Are there things or are there foods that you kind of are aware of that you don't react well to in general?
Well, so far, bread has been my first pick. I used to think, I could eat almost anything. Obviously, it wasn't meat at the time, but I guess I haven't been that in tune with my body for many years.
Well, and you said something really important, and this is something that it's not just you. This is something that comes up with a lot of my clients, which is that it's kind of like how I only saw my own cycle and I didn't realize that it wasn't normal. Because you said it's my experience with having typically we're having bowel movements, daily alone in the bathroom by ourselves. And so just like you said, you may think that everyone. So I didn't think anything of the fact that I was constipated, like a lot. Like I was just like, whatever. So then the other thing that I always kind of put out there is that what you said about being disconnected from your body, like if you are kind of experiencing a subtle or even a bit more overt GI issue for a long period of time, you don't know how bad it is until you actually feel good. And then all of a sudden you look back and you're like, holy crap, I felt horrible for the last 3 years. And I had no idea that it was that bad.
Yeah. And you just cope with it because you're like, this is just how life is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yes. So we've unpacked the bread. And so let's jump to some of the charting things. I have a few, as you can imagine, I have a few other things that I want to talk about, but we can't talk for like 16 hours. But one of the things, so to bring it back to the charting for a minute, I had you fill out my check-in document here. So I just wanted to go through some of those things. Actually, Carolina, maybe you could share just real quick what it was like. So at the beginning of our work together, you went through the videos, I sent you the book, and this is a Justice user guide that we went through. And I have a 7-video introductory online course on a separate website for my clients. And so all of my clients go through that first with the book, and then we hash it out in our sessions and in our group work. And so maybe you could just share what that learning process was like, your understanding of mucus before, and then kind of your understanding of mucus now.
Oh man, I feel like the whole process was so foreign to me. Like I didn't even know what the fertility awareness method is. And since this, I've asked so many people and everyone is like, I've never heard of that. So we never learned this stuff. And so I had no idea mucus did anything. I still thought you could get pregnant any time of the month. So, I mean, it's definitely been a journey. And I mean, obviously, like, from listening to your show, there's lots of things I learned, but definitely from the course that we've been taking, I actually feel like I can differentiate the types of mucus and I kind of know when I'm expecting to see it. So that's been kind of exciting to actually see it unfold. It's a slow process because it's like once a day, like entering all your information, but of course you're checking all day long. So it's kind of, I mean, there's definitely a lot that I've gotten that I had no idea about 10 weeks ago even. So, and there's still a lot more that I feel like I still have questions about. So, which is why I'm continuing.
Yeah, no, for sure. Maybe you could share your understanding of the difference between peak and non-peak mucus, because I know some of them were checked like yes and no.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Well, okay. Well, so I know peak mucus is finger testable. But
yes and no.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes. There's a caveat.
Yes. The egg whites are definitely peak mucus. Wait. Are you talking about the peak mucus as in the last day mucus?
Well, so peak mucus is any mucus that is clear, stretchy, or slippery. So sometimes peak mucus is finger testable, meaning that you can pick it up and kind of stretch it between your fingers, but sometimes it's not. And so have you had a sensation where it's lubricative, so super slippery, but you haven't been able to pick anything up?
Well, I feel like I have, but I don't think I've charted that.
Okay.
Yeah, but you're talking the kind that basically hit the back of the toilet seat.
Yes. So
Yes.
so you're wiping from front to back across your perineum, and then it slips like, phew, but then you go to pick it up, and there's nothing that you can actually pick up. And what you might see on the tissue, it could look like wet, like a big like wet spot. It could look shiny, or it could even look like damp. But the sensation itself was peak. So it is possible, and that is a peak observation. So that means that you're fertile that day. And so if you have peak mucus, then it doesn't have to be finger testable. Sometimes it is. And then not every woman is going to have that second observation that I described. So you're not like abnormal if you never see that observation where it's slippery but nothing to pick up. Yes. But some women do have that. And then they wonder, is it fertile or is it not? But it is.
Yes.
It's a sign of peak fertility. So you've had the peak observations where it's slippery, and then you actually have the finger testable egg white.
Yes.
Type mucus, yeah. And so I noticed that on the days that you see it, it looks like you're seeing it once or twice a day.
Yes.
Okay. You had mentioned on the forum that you weren't sure how to draw the baseline. So I don't know if do you have your Just ESAP up?
I can. Yeah, I actually was trying to draw my line last night, and I couldn't make the tab move.
Okay. Well, so if you go into your most recent chart,
yes.
It's now logged me out. Then if you go, so you just go into like the BBT, open
yes.
it up, and then there's something at the bottom that says set baseline. And then you can go up and down, yeah. So then
and I remember when we were in class, you were showing where you would draw the line.
So which chart are you looking at?
I'm looking at the last September, October.
Okay. So just a little quick sidebar then. The baseline and the cover line, those are words that I've used interchangeably. So for anyone who's charted their cycles or who's read Taking Charge of Your Fertility, the baseline is the line. So if you had a physical chart, a piece of paper, and you're plotting your temperatures every morning on the graph, then you would have, at some point, you would ovulate and you would see the temperature shift. So the shift we're looking for is you're looking for a temperature that is higher than the last 6 and that stays high. So we're looking for what's called a sustained thermal shift. And so then you would actually draw the baseline a little bit higher than the highest pre-ovulatory temperature. But essentially what it is it's supposed to divide the pre-ovulatory and the post-ovulatory temperatures. So your post-ov are supposed to stay up higher. So in your charts, Carolina, in the July chart?
The September, October.
Yeah.
What I'm looking at.
Yeah. In the July one, it was more kind of obvious between the pre-ov and the post-ov. Okay. There was more of a distinction. And what I'm seeing in the August, September, and September, October is that we're seeing this spike, but then it's kind of like crashing down. It's not staying above the cover line. Mm-hmm. And so my first thought on that would be, are you actually ovulating? Which I think you are.
I think I am too. Well, I know we did, because I did let you know that I normally spot for several days before my period, and I feel like I can see that now based on looking at these. I mean, I think that's what I'm saying. Mm-hmm. Just because my temperatures do go up, but then they start dropping, and like for example, the September, October, it dips down to my baseline about day 26.
Yes, exactly.
Where it basically hits the baseline. And I feel like I started spotting right actually during that day.
Well, and so one of the things I had on my little list here to ask you is, you mentioned that you did have your thyroid testing done, and we talked about this in the group. So have you had a full panel done at any point?
I had so I know I know there's the T3s, the T4s.
Yeah, T3,
I know
T4,
4 different tests.
TSH, yeah. And when was that done?
I've had it done twice. The first time was November 2015. And then the second time was April 2016.
Okay.
And they all tested fine, which is crazy.
Well, do you still have those?
I do.
Okay. So that's, I'm going to give you some homework. So I'm going to make a note of it. If you could send those to me.
Yes.
Because we've talked a little bit about that. It's normal depending who's looking at it. So your doctor could look at it and say it's totally normal. Your naturopath could look at it and be like, whoa, that's not normal. If you have a fertility doctor, so a doctor who specializes in fertility, so the difference between your fertility doctor and your regular doctor, your fertility doctor could look at it and say it's not normal, and your regular doctor could look at it and say it's totally fine. So there's a lot of, that's why I need to actually see the numbers before I can jump on it's fine. You mentioned at the beginning of the podcast that you found the podcast because you were searching for information on MTHFR. So did you actually go and get that testing done?
Yeah, so I did the 23andMe testing basically after the fourth miscarriage because my fertility doctor said, "Oh, can't find anything wrong with you. Let's do IVF." And I knew that that wasn't the right choice for me, and I knew that there was something else going on with my body, and I needed to figure it out. So I did the 23andMe, and I do have a hetero mutation, so I don't have the full panel, the full mutation, and it's one of the less common ones. I believe it's the 1298. I believe that's what it is. Along with that, there's actually several other factors that I'm now learning that affects, fertility, not just the NTHFR, but, that's the one that's been getting a lot of press and there's a lot more information about lately because it's, the epigenetics is such a new concept.
Mm-hmm. Because you could have the mutation, but it doesn't mean that it's been activated.
Yes.
The other thing I wanted to just ask about, so have your B12, have you been tested, specifically B12 levels in iron? Is that something that you've actually?
I don't, I know I just did a huge number of tests with my new doctor, and I think he's tested it. I haven't got the results back yet.
Okay. But
I know I had been starting to take raw B12 complex on recommendation from my acupuncturist.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So to start getting more of those nutrients, but
yes. Yeah, no, definitely. Okay. But yes, we've covered a lot of ground. Before we wrap up today, did you have any other questions you wanted me to address before the end of our call?
Well, I have a million questions, and that's why I'm going to be continuing working with you.
Yeah. Well, I will send you a summary of what we've talked about, which is, I always do that after my sessions, my one-on-one sessions. And so then, and then in between, I'm sure you may have follow-ups and things like that. So
yes. Yeah.
Okay. So then I guess before we end the call today, I'm just thinking of a couple of questions that I could ask you, but I guess from your experience and everything, is there anything that you'd want the listeners to know? I'm sure that there's women listening who have experienced miscarriages themselves, who have struggled to try to figure out what the heck is going on with their cycles, and also who have sought support from, their different health professionals and just haven't felt that they're getting the answers that they want. Because obviously it's nothing bad against a medical professional, but doctors have a limited amount of time. If you see a functional practitioner, typically the appointments are longer at least.
Yeah.
But what, I guess, encouragement or advice from your own experience would you want that listener to hear?
I think for me, I feel like if I had just listened to everything that my fertility doctor would say, or, I feel like I could have been, spending $20,000, $40,000 already by now if I just listened to her saying that she couldn't figure out what's wrong with me. I think seeking out this information and knowledge about my body and my, what my body needs and what my body's doing has been very empowering for me. Granted, I still haven't had a successful pregnancy, but I also haven't been trying since my last one because I want to be educated and I want to know why everything's happening. And I feel like that's really important. And I wish all women knew more about their body and what they were doing to it and, how that affects what they're making inside of them. I will say the silver lining in all of this is, whatever child I can bring into the world now will be definitely set up for a healthier life and a healthier birthing process than I could have given it, just several months ago when I didn't know anything about healthy animal fats and didn't know anything about raw milk and didn't know anything about, taking care of my body like this. So I feel like that's one blessing that has happened from all of this, is that our future family will have a healthier life.
Oh, you almost made me, you did make me tear up a little bit. Yeah. So yes, thank you so much for being here, Carolina. It was great to have you on the show, and I'm really excited to just delve in with you and sort all this stuff out.
Thank you, Lisa. Appreciate you doing what you do.
Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed today's show, please share it with a friend. And you'll find the show notes page for today's episode at fertilityfriday.com/107. I hope that you enjoyed my interview with Carolina. It was such a pleasure to be able to have her on the show and to be able to have our one-on-one session together and really delve into all of the different topics that we discussed. I know that many of you listening may have had a similar experience to Carolina, and so I really hope that by her sharing her experience today, that it's been informative and helpful for you as well. And I want to encourage any of you who are considering being part of my group program, or even who are thinking about working with me, just to head over and check it out. So you can go to fertilityfriday.com/workwithme, and you'll see more information there about my programs, as well as my new group program that I'm launching in January. And so enrollment is open, and you are certainly welcome to apply. I want you to keep in mind that spaces are limited, so there's only a limited number of women that I can accept into the group. So we do have a capacity. And so if you're thinking about doing it, I would encourage you to head over to fertilityfriday.com/group program. And you can apply there, and you can find out more information about the programs on that site. And so I just want to thank you so much for listening to the show. I would love to hear what you think about this format. It's something new that I'm trying, and I was really excited about just the thought of sharing what I do on air, and also my clients were really excited to be part of it, because one of my clients commented that, it's one of these topics that in their day-to-day lives, they don't really have much of a chance and opportunity to talk about in depth in this way. And after learning about this information, I'm sure many of you can relate, when you learn about the menstrual cycle and how it works, and how we're not really being taught all of this information for some reason, then obviously my clients wanted to be part of it. They wanted to be part of raising awareness, and also just the thought of their story being able to help somebody listening. That was what really drove them to be on the show and to share their information within this context. And so I just want to hear what you think about it. So you can jump into my Facebook group, my private Facebook group that I host for the Fertility Friday community, because we often chat about the episodes in there. So to be part of that group, just head over to fertilityfriday.com/community, and you'll be redirected to the group. So we can certainly chat about it in there. And you can also head over to the show notes page, so fertilityfriday.com/107, and share your comments and thoughts about the show there. If you've been enjoying the podcast, please do look for it on iTunes and leave a 5-star review so that more people can find it. And also make sure to head over to fertilityfriday.com and join my email list. And, if you do have any ideas for future podcast episodes or guest suggestions, make sure to send me an email at info@fertilityfriday.com. And I just want to thank you for hanging out with me today, for spending some time with me, for letting me be part of your day. I really appreciate all of you for taking the time to tune into the show, for sharing it with your friends. It makes such a big difference. And I'll just throw in there that November is my birthday month. Yay! I'm taking over the whole month, I've decided. So it might be kind of weird for me to ask for a birthday present, but I'm going to ask for one anyways. And so I would love for you to share the podcast in whatever way is best for you. I feel like that would be the greatest birthday gift that you could give to me. So whether it's leaving a review on iTunes, or whether it's sharing the podcast in some way, shape, or form. And I know some of you listening have your own platforms and your own blogs and your own ways of sharing with the world. So I would be absolutely honored if you would share the podcast or a particular episode, or however it is that you can do that in your area, in your life. That would be the greatest birthday gift for me. So if you choose to do something like that, I would love to hear about it. So you can shoot me an email, or you can tag me on social media, or whatever it is. And that would be the greatest birthday gift. So yes, November is my birthday month. Happy birthday to me. And so thank you so much for your birthday presents. Oh my goodness, I'm such a nerd. But yes, thank you so much for hanging out with me today. And as always, until next time, be well and happy charting.